beginning of the reminiscence, and then go all the way down through Homedale and across Homedale Park and down through Bayonet Farm, all the way to the Swimming River Reservoir, so that people could have this wonderful long hiking trail. So over the almost 23 years of CELU's existence, we have transitioned from advocating for open space and preservation of natural resources to quality of life issues. And so within that, that's why we've invited Mr. Jackopino to come and talk to us about this really important vaccination and all this important information that we have for trying to take care of ourselves. So we are just kind of waiting here until he can come. So he has been very generous with his time. People have sent in lots of questions, and all the questions that came to me, I forwarded to him. And he spent his weekend going through them and trying to figure out how to organize his presentation. Please listen very carefully to the presentation to see if your question has been answered. If it hasn't been answered, then at the bottom of your screen, you will see a little Q&A. So you can write into that Q&A your question, and then RG and I will be reading them, and we will present them to Jerry, and so he can answer them. He will stay as long as necessary to answer the questions that are needed. As you know, he's a wonderful pharmacist. So Jerry is the pharmacist at Hazlet Pharmacy, and he's a second-generation pharmacist. He graduated from Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science and began working as a pharmacist for Hazlet Pharmacy in 1991. I've known him for 20 of the years that we've lived here. He always is the kind of guy who goes over and beyond for all the people who go to his pharmacy, as is evident by all the people that are here on this call here today. So he is registered by the state to administer the COVID vaccine. And as soon as he comes here and lets us know he is ready to talk, we actually have reached 100 participants. So everyone who is not here now will have to just watch this on the YouTube video. I think that, I guess I should talk about all the wonderful things that our organization has done, or maybe we will just have a few more minutes of quiet until he gets here. If anyone has questions about CELU, I'd be happy to answer them. We have a board that meets once a month, and we have different presentations of interest to the community. Last month, we had a meeting on transportation and the future of transportation. The month before that, we did a candidate forum. If anyone is interested in watching our YouTube videos, you can go on CELU and YouTube channel CELU, and you'll see all the back YouTube, all the back videos that have been done. Scott Goldstein, one of previous president, started videotaping the board meetings, the township committee meetings. All those are on there, ready for people to go and watch. So, okay, so actually we have one of the original members of CELU, Citizens for Informed Land Use, Roberta Kaufman here. And she said that her aunt was one of the first women to graduate from the Philadelphia School of Pharmacy. So thank you, Roberta. That's really nice information. I know I'm trying to kill time here, so I really kind of apologize to people, because I know that Jerry will be here very soon. Hmm. This is quite a crazy situation here. No. Very curious how this all works. So our next talk next month. So the third Monday of every month is when we have our CLU meetings. And next month, our meeting is going to be on the new laws about plastic bags. Here he is.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you, Jerry. I am so happy to see you. And look at your wonderful setting that you're in. This is the perfect kind of place. We have over 100 people here.
Okay.
So that is a testament to how well liked you are, I think. I was telling everybody that you have been a pharmacist there since 1991, but that I've known you ever since we moved here about 20 some years ago. And you have been the most reliable, steady guy. I even spend more money and don't use insurance so that I can come to you.
Thank you.
Because of your trustworthiness. So, but I know you're very busy, and I was very pleased that you were willing to come and share your expertise with everybody here tonight. So without further ado, people have been waiting. I will let you begin your talk. So I've told people to listen to you carefully.
Okay.
And to save their questions. And if their questions aren't answered, then they're to write their question in the Q&A at the bottom of the screens.
Okay.
All right, so thank you, Jerry.
All right. Hello. I'm sorry we're starting a little bit later than we had originally anticipated. But in sure COVID form, I had an employee who couldn't work tonight because she was exposed, and that's just, the way the last year has gone. So for those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a quick brief background on myself. My name is Jerry Jackopino. I am the president owner of Hazlet Pharmacy. I'm a second generation pharmacist. I own and manage a large independent family run retail pharmacy along with my sister and my mother, other family members. We employ about 34 employees, so we're a good sized store. My father started the business in 1959. I was born, raised, and educated here in Homedale High School, class of '86. I received my pharmacy degree, my Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy in Philadelphia College of Pharmacy in 1991. I am a pharmacist. I am a preceptor. I train pharmacist students that are going to both Rutgers and Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. I've been a pharmacist since 1991. I've been a preceptor for the past 10 years, and I've been a vaccinator since 2013. I've personally filled over 1 million prescriptions, trained dozens of students, and administered thousands of vaccines. So I'm here to talk a little bit about coronavirus and the vaccine that is out for it. I'm not going to assume everybody knows everything about these things. So if I'm saying things that you know the answers to already, I'll try to be brief and give a quick history on what we're about to talk about. So coronavirus, also known as the SARS-CoV-2 virus, first cases were reported in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. So we're talking about a virus we've only known for, we're just going on 13 months here. It's believed to have mutated from a virus that infected bats, both MERS, another coronavirus, and SARS, also believed to have mutated this way. All three are coronaviruses. All are named for the spikes on their surface that are crown-like. So corona meaning crown, that's where the virus got its name. So these spikes that are on the surface of the coronavirus are very common with the coronaviruses, but not with anything else. So it's something that's a very strong characteristic of them. So this is something that we noticed last December it started. It was very quickly declared an epidemic in China in February of 2020, only 2.5 months after it was first seen. And the next month, in March of 2020, it was declared a global pandemic. And this just shows like what we're dealing with here, something that is different than anything I've seen in my lifetime. The reason it was declared a pandemic was mainly the speed and the scale of the transmission of the disease and how widespread it became. So there's different phases of coronavirus. Some people have very mild cases, and most people will recover in a few weeks. Some are asymptomatic; they don't have any symptoms. Most will have mild to moderate symptoms: runny nose, cough, sore throat, headache, fever, nausea, diarrhea, fatigue, and loss of taste or smell. Some will have severe symptoms: pneumonia, respiratory failure, heart problems, blood clots, and these may lead to hospitalizations, and they also can sometimes lead to death. And this is really the fear of COVID, of coronavirus. And the disease seems to go through different stages in different people. Some people stay in that early infection phase and it doesn't get any worse. Some go to that pulmonary phase where it has more lung involvement, and some go to this hyperinflammatory phase where the disease kind of takes over the body. And increased age and increased risk factors seem to worsen the outcome, but it's not always predictable. I've seen 95-year-olds do great with it, and lost some close people in town who were in their 50s. It just doesn't make sense sometimes. Currently, most cases are not as fatal as they were early in the pandemic. Doctors have learned how to treat the disease in the different stages much better. They've been able to save a lot more lives. But the truth of the matter is there's a lot of, the data is staggering in the world. As of January 17th, I put the latest data in there. We've had almost 95 million cases, over 2 million deaths. United States alone, 24 million cases, almost 400,000 deaths. New Jersey, 622,000 cases, over 20,000 deaths. Monmouth County, over 42,000 cases and over 1,000 deaths. So it's hitting close to home, and it's something it's scary enough that we need a solution here. In the last 2 weeks, over 20,000 people died in the United States per week. So that's 40,000 people in the last 2 weeks. So there has been an outpouring of research into this in the last year. There's currently over 1,000 clinical trials for different COVID-19 related conditions. There's been an unprecedented amount of time and money that has been poured into research to end this global pandemic. That research has gone into testing, it's gone into treatments, it's gone into looking at different outcomes, but it's also looked at vaccines. So that's really what we're here to talk about today, is the vaccines. So Operation Warp Speed, which you've all heard of, I'm sure, has lived up to its name. In less than 1 year, we have gone from looking at this virus and producing a vaccine. We've produced more than one vaccine. We have 2 approved in this country, and worldwide there have been 9 vaccines approved. There's 54 more in development. So sometimes I think that makes people nervous, Operation Warp Speed. What does that mean? Does that mean they rushed this product? And that's not the case. Steps weren't skipped or rushed. They were just done simultaneously. There was huge influx of money from governments to help fund this research. There's been collaborations like we've never seen before in partnerships with governments and regulatory authorities and the scientific community around the whole world, not just in funding, but in pooling of knowledge. People have shared their knowledge to get this pandemic under control. In most research, we would start with a phase 1. We would determine if something's safe, and then we would take the product to determine if it works. Mainly because we don't want to waste money on a product if it was never determined to be safe. We're not going to put the money in to see if it works. We did phase 1 and phase 2 at the same time. So we were able to overlap phases, not skip any steps, and get this product to market a lot quicker than we ever were able to before. I actually read somewhere that the last time there was a pandemic that we made a vaccine for was the mumps pandemic, and it took 4 years to get a vaccine to market. So we blew that one out of the water. We got one out in less than a year. So the vaccines that have been approved are called mRNA vaccines. These differ from your typical vaccine. So I'm sure people have some questions of what is this vaccine and why is it different? So mRNA vaccines are not new. They have actually been studied for over a decade. They take advantage of a process in the cell. Your cell has a process, a function that it makes proteins. So this vaccine, instead of giving you a dead virus to produce antibodies to, it gives your body a set of instructions. It's like the cell is working at its desk, and the vaccine hands it a set of instructions and say, you know what, make this protein. So the cell just follows the order and makes the protein, discards the instructions. Well, the protein that it's making the spike protein that's on the surface of the coronavirus. So it's using the cell to do what it would normally do anyway, to create the protein. So now they effectively get the protein, the spike protein from the coronavirus in your body without ever having to put the virus in your body. So what that means is your body makes these spike proteins, throws out the instructions, and then says, wait a minute, what's all this stuff? Let's build some antibodies to get rid of it. So you get the antibodies, you don't have any risk of catching the disease from the vaccine. So the mRNA, it uses a strand of messenger RNA to create this protein to create the immune response. And that's all it is. It doesn't interact with your DNA in any harmful way. It never enters the nucleus of the cell. The cell makes the protein, and then we build the antibodies, and that's it. So the first of the two that was approved was made by Pfizer and BioNTech. It received its emergency use authorization on December 11th. It was a huge trial, 43,000 participants in the trial. What they determined is that 2 doses, 21 days apart, would give you 95% effectiveness at preventing coronavirus. That's wonderful. We haven't hit those numbers with our flu vaccine in years. There's no eggs, there's no preservatives, there's no latex in the product. The side effects that most people would experience are pain, swelling, and redness at the injection site. And possibly in the body, you might feel fever, you might feel chills, you might feel tired, you might have a headache. And those seem to be more common after the second dose, not so much after the first dose. Most of those symptoms will start within a day or two and go away within a few days. And most side effects were very mild to moderate. There's a very small number of people who reported severe side effects, and severe side effects were described as side effects that affects a person's ability to do their daily activities. So maybe a really bad headache, or maybe fever and chills that you just want to lay down all day. But in my mind, those are still mild in comparison to the disease that we're dealing with. The second vaccine was made by a company called Moderna. They received their emergency use authorization 1 week later, December 18th. There were 30,000 participants in the trial, also huge. So between the two, we had 73,000 participants in the trial. Some received placebo and some received the vaccine. Very similar outcome, 94.1% effective, also no eggs, also no preservatives, also no latex. The only difference was the Moderna found it was more effective using the second dose 28 days later. So Pfizer is 2 doses within 21 days, Moderna is 2 doses within 28 days. The main issue we seem to have with these vaccines are allergies. And most of this has been noticed after we've been giving the vaccine, after their approval, is that some people have allergies. So what they recommend is when you receive your vaccine, we watch you for 15 minutes afterwards to make sure you don't have the start of an allergic reaction. If you've ever had an anaphylactic reaction after a vaccine or to one of the ingredients in the vaccine, and the main one that seems to be the problem is a product known as polyethylene glycol, or PEG. And they also say if you have allergies to polysorbate, even though there's not polysorbate in the vaccine, polysorbate and polyethylene glycol are similar enough that if you're allergic to one of them, you could have an allergic reaction to this vaccine. If you have an allergic reaction to the vaccine, it has to be managed as an anaphylactic allergic reaction. We're talking EpiPens, we're talking, going to the hospital, being put on prednisone, Benadryl. These are rare. These are rare. They didn't show up in the 73,000 people who received either the placebo or the vaccine in the trials. They've shown up after that. So we watch you. If you've ever had an anaphylactic reaction to anything, we'll watch you for 30 minutes after you receive the vaccine. If you've ever had just regular allergies, it's fine. If you have seasonal allergies, it's fine. If you're allergic to peanuts, it's fine. If you're allergic to eggs, it's fine. It's only if you have allergies to polyethylene glycol, polysorbate, or ever had an anaphylactic reaction after receiving a vaccine. And an anaphylactic reaction after a vaccine is typically considered within 4 hours of receiving a vaccine. So I received my first dose of the vaccine on December 29th. I was notified by the Board of Health that they were vaccinating health professionals. They had vaccine put aside for pharmacy employees, pharmacists. So I, like everybody else, I was a little bit hesitant at first because it's a little scary. It's something new, but I'm trusting the science, and I got my vaccine. A little over half of my staff has now been vaccinated with their first doses. Nobody had any serious side effects. I just had a sore arm for a day and a half. Came very quickly the next morning. I felt a sore arm, and by the next evening, it was almost completely gone. It was really nothing. My scientific mind wanted to determine if this was going to work. So I do antibody testing here at the pharmacy. I tested myself for antibodies the night before the test because I said, for sure, I've been around people for this entire pandemic. I've been working in the pharmacy every day, bringing product to people's curbside out back when they had coronavirus, masked and gloved. But, I've been around it enough. I'm sure I probably have antibodies anyway. Nothing, no antibodies. So I got my vaccine. 1 week later, I checked again. Let me see. I bet I have antibodies now. It must be working. Nothing, no antibodies. So 2 weeks after my first dose, I checked my antibodies. There's antibodies. So not only do we have a product that I had very little reaction to, but it works. I have the antibodies to the spike proteins, which is exactly what we're looking for. It's exactly what we're going to do. The virus never had to enter my system, but I now have the antibodies to fight it off if and when it does. So that's the take-home point here. It's a product and it works. So a lot of people have been concerned about the safety because it was rushed, because it's unknown, because it's new. Some people are hesitant to get the vaccine. What I tell most people is I fear the disease more than the vaccine. I've seen what the coronavirus has done to people. I've seen how people have died, hospitalized, long-term effects after having coronavirus. We don't know. We don't know all the long-term effects that a virus will have in your system. The technology is new here, but in comparison to other vaccines, it's new. It's not unknown. They've been studied for over a decade. When SARS and MERS came out, a lot of research was put into this technology, but then it wasn't needed because SARS and MERS just kind of burnt out and weren't an issue. But we had that platform already done. We had a decade of work put into this that we could pick up and take over where we left off. Also, the mRNA vaccine does not contain a live virus. There's no risk of causing the disease. Allergies to foods and other medications don't seem to be a problem. It's just some people have those allergic reactions if you're allergic to those ingredients. And the studies show that it's very effective. Again, as far as long-term effects from the vaccine, there doesn't appear to be any concern for any long-term effects from the vaccine. We don't know if there's any long-term effects from coronavirus. There's a lot of viruses that are out there that have long-term effects that we've learned about. Varicella causes chickenpox when you're a kid, comes back and gets you 50, 60, 70 years later as an adult as shingles. Herpes virus gets into your system, never leaves. HIV gets into your system, never leaves. Epstein-Barr sometimes gets into your system and causes fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, never leaves your system. HPV, human papillomavirus, gets into your system, years later can cause cervical cancer, certain throat cancers, head and neck cancers that they're finding. So I'll take my chances with the science over the disease because we don't know about the disease, and I'm trusting the science. There's also some reports online about pregnancy, infertility. Somebody had posted something online. We were getting a lot of questions about the coronavirus, perhaps the vaccine, by creating these antibodies to the spike protein, could create antibodies to a different protein that causes placental attachment. It's a completely different protein. It has, if they have a couple amino acids in common, it's a lot. That's been all discounted. There's no concern here. In fact, during the Pfizer study, 23 participants became pregnant during the study. There was one pregnancy loss in the study, but it was in the placebo group. It wasn't in the group that received the vaccine anyway. So it doesn't seem like that's a concern. And then we don't know how long the immunity is going to last from the vaccine. We don't know. We might need a booster dose down the road. Right now, it's 2 doses of Pfizer, 2 doses of Moderna. Maybe we're going to need a yearly COVID shot with our flu vaccine for a few years. Maybe we'll need a booster after 2 years, 10 years, we don't know. But those things will be found out because the studies that went on in the participants are continuing, and we're going to find out those answers. Also want to mention there's another vaccine on the horizon by Johnson & Johnson. A lot of people have heard about that. Being co-produced by Johnson & Johnson and Janssen Pharmaceuticals. It's different. It's not an mRNA vaccine. It's an adenovirus vaccine. It's considered a viral vector vaccine. They take an adenovirus, which is very similar to a common cold, and they mutate it. They cause this adenovirus to grow coronavirus spikes, and then they kill it, inactivate it, and they inject that. So it's a little different. That's more of a traditional type of vaccine where you're being injected with an inactivated vaccine, an inactivated virus. Again, the whole purpose is to get your body to build antibodies to the spike protein without you encountering the virus itself. And this technology is actually well known too. Johnson & Johnson has used this approach in its Ebola vaccine, which was approved late 2019. And it's also been investigating vaccines for both HIV and RSV. And there's a lot of safety data on them. The neat thing about Johnson & Johnson's vaccine is it's temperature stable. A lot of you have heard about these vaccines having to be kept very cold, frozen storage. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is stable under regular freezer temperature for 2 years and regular refrigerator temperature for 3 months. And it's 1 dose. There's no need for a booster dose. They're about ready to submit their application to the FDA. Should come before the end of the month or by the end of the month, and anticipating that they'll be approved and available in February. So they had 45,000 participants in their trial. It's in phase 3 now. They have a goal of producing a billion doses in 2021, which is wonderful. We can use the extra vaccine. There's also 2 other companies, AstraZeneca and Novavax, which are believed to have a vaccine available before the end of the year. probably within the next few months. And Merck is working on a vaccine as well, which is predicted to be available sometime this year. So where are we coming from? We had a year ago, we didn't know about this vaccine. We didn't even know about the virus. A year later, we have 2 vaccines approved, 4 more good-looking vaccines on the horizon. There should be a lot of doses available very, very soon. And this is why everybody's trying to find out, where do I get a dose of this vaccine? How do I get vaccinated? You hear stories, you hear things to do. I'm going to tell you what I feel is the best way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, but I feel it's the best way to do it. I do feel that if you read, the state has a plan. Now, we can criticize the state's plan and we can say that, it's not working, nobody's getting vaccines, everybody's available to get vaccines. I do believe that the governor jumped ahead a little bit too quickly when he opened up the vaccine to everybody over 65 and everybody 16 to 64 with other risk factors. I think it was a little bit too premature because we don't have vaccine available. It opened up the door so that 4 million people in New Jersey are right now technically eligible to get the vaccine, and the state is receiving about 100,000 doses per week. So you do the math, it's going to take us a long time at that pace to get everybody a vaccine, but more vaccines coming. The original plan was to vaccinate the healthcare professionals first, vaccinate the long-term care residents second, then go on to law enforcement, first responders, teachers, people with high risk factors, 75 years old, and work our way down. So it is what it is. We got to work through it. He did liken it to, we're trying to build the plane as we're flying it. I feel a little bit more like we're trying to build a parachute after we already jumped out of the airplane, but I think we'll get there eventually. I know it feels like it's going slow, but in 1 month, just a little over 5 weeks of vaccinating, as of January 15th, 12.28 million doses have been administered in this country. That is a very large number. It's nowhere near where we have to get. We got to get to 300 million doses administered to get to herd immunity. It's going to take a while. So I feel the best way to register for this vaccine is to go on the state's website and register on the New Jersey State website. I put a link to it on my website. If you go to hazletpharmacy.com, it's easy to find. Just go down to the link that says register information on the COVID vaccine. It takes you to a page and it says register for your vaccine here. It takes you right to the site. You put in your information. That way, when there is vaccine available, you will get a message to make an appointment. So how it works is you put your information in, they'll tell you that you're registered. Then you wait. You wait until they send you a message that says you can now schedule an appointment. When you schedule an appointment, it'll come up with the closest 5 to 10 locations near you. And every single one of them is going to say there's no appointments at this time because we're all waiting for vaccine. Very soon that will change. When you get notified, you'll be able to make your appointment. That time slot, that ability to make an appointment doesn't go away. If you find out next week that you can make an appointment and there's no appointments available, the next week there's going to be appointments available. The week after that, there'll be even more. Each week it's going to get easier and easier because we're getting more and more sites opened up to do the vaccine. We're getting more and more vaccine available into the hands of the vaccinators to get them into the arms of the people. And we will get there. There is a plan. It's slow going now, but as the vaccine availability increases, the vaccines administered will begin to exponentially increase. That number, that 12.28 million doses, we're at like 3% of the population. It's a very small number. And, sometimes there's something was in the media where Israel had vaccinated 25% of its population, but 25% of its population is only 2 million people. The population, I believe, is like 8 million. They vaccinated 2 million. That's great and everything, but we have vaccinated over 12 million and we are going to get a lot more going. There's more than one way the vaccine is going to get into our hands. It's right now going from the state level. The federal government is distributing it to the 50 states. The 50 states, through their boards of health, are distributing it to the small number of vaccinators that were originally set up. We are being set up as a vaccination site. We are not ready yet. We do not have vaccine yet. We will be ready within probably a week to a week and a half. There's very likely we'll have vaccine in about 2 weeks, if there's vaccine available for us to get. So appointments are going to be hard to find right now, but they will get a lot easier. I also wanted to mention that the vaccine won't cost you anything. All the plans will cover it. If your plan doesn't cover it, at no copay. If your plan doesn't cover it, you will get it without charge. If you're uninsured, you will get it without charge. The government has already paid for all this vaccine. The only thing your insurance company has to cover is the cost of me or the vaccinator to give you the dose. So it's really, they're just reimbursing us for our time and any supplies we're using. But the vaccine won't cost you anything. You should not have to pay for this vaccine. So I guess I really am saying we have to be patient. We're not at the point where you could walk in anywhere right now to receive a vaccine. You have to make an appointment. So there are other ways you can register for the vaccine or make appointments. People are scouring the internet to find vaccine locations. Most of the places that are taking vaccine appointments are places like I heard today Bayshore Hospital was opening up some slots for appointments. You can check on their website every day. The Visiting Nurse Association, they do have a website you can check. They do open appointments every day. But you can try that. I think you're going to drive yourself crazy. We've been living with masks and hand sanitizer and gloves and in confinement for a year now. I think we could do it for a few more weeks because I really do believe that in the next couple of weeks, it's going to get a lot better. So looking over all the questions that came up, I'm going to read through them and go through some answers that I've come up with. I'm going to take a few minutes for that. So first question was, we have already registered for the vaccine. Do they tell us which vaccine we are getting and what strength? So no, you're not going to get to choose what vaccine you're getting. There is only one strength of each particular vaccine. So when you get an appointment, you're going to go to the appointment. You're just going to take whatever vaccine you get. It's hard enough to find an appointment. If you want to choose what vaccine, it's going to take you even longer to find. If you're going to be a little bit pickier like that, you could wait, but it's going to take you longer to find the vaccine. Most sites are going to be using Moderna vaccine, and then once J&J is approved, J&J vaccine will be found as well. Pfizer is a little harder to find if that's the one you're looking for because it does have the ultra cold storage. It has to be stored at -70 degrees Celsius. Most places don't have a way to keep something that cold, but you probably could find that at some of the hospitals. Next question is, I suffer with dust pollen allergies, sometimes with sinusitis. I also suffer with acid reflux. Do I still get the vaccine? Yes. Any allergies other than anaphylaxis within 4 hours of another vaccine or confirmed anaphylaxis allergy to PEG, polyethylene glycol, or polysorbate can get the vaccine. If you're unsure, you should check with your doctor. After being vaccinated, can we have our daily 1 hour walk? Absolutely. Walk all you want. It's good for you. Just keep your mask on and use your hand sanitizer. And that brings up another thing. When you do get your vaccine, so my results, I didn't show antibodies for 2 weeks afterwards, but I'm not trusting that. We can't trust that because after one dose of the vaccine, we're only at around 50% protection. We need that second dose to get up to that 95% protection. So the masks aren't going away anytime soon. The hand sanitizer is not going away anytime soon. The precautions aren't going away anytime soon. We have to get to herd immunity. Then once we get to herd immunities, the numbers will drop and we can get back to normal. And that's really the thing. It's not about getting each person a vaccine. It's about getting 75% of America the vaccine. That's really the goal here. Next question was, when will I get the second dose of the vaccine? So depending on the vaccine, I explained it's either 21 or 28 days later. What are the side effects or symptoms I may feel? I already went over that. Most of them are just local, mild side effects. Do you need a COVID test before getting the vaccination? No, you don't need a COVID test. If you have any symptoms of COVID or if you've been exposed to COVID, you should wait to make sure you don't have COVID. It doesn't make any sense to get the vaccine if you've been exposed and you just tested positive, because it takes 2 weeks for the antibodies to produce. By the time they're producing, you would be producing them from your own infection, and it's not going to give you any benefit. And if you already had COVID, you should wait 90 days before you get the vaccine. Recommendation right now is wait a full 90 days after having COVID to get the vaccine. The reasons for that are there have been almost no reported cases of someone catching COVID a second time within 90 days. And there's no real benefit because we don't know how long the vaccine's going to last you. You're better off waiting the 90 days and getting the vaccine at that time. So the next question was, what will the criteria for future COVID vaccines? We don't know what the criteria are for future COVID. In other words, future doses. That's still being determined. And future COVID different vaccines, we won't know of the dosages or the criteria. Only one I know of is AstraZeneca is also 2 doses, and Johnson & Johnson is going to be 1 dose. How soon can you have a COVID vaccine after receipt of a second shingles vaccine? It's recommended that we keep COVID vaccine at minimum of 2 weeks apart from any other vaccine. So if you received a shingles vaccine recently, or a flu vaccine recently, or a pneumonia vaccine, or a tetanus vaccine, or any other vaccine, we want to wait a full 2 weeks before you get your first COVID vaccine. What are your opinions of the Biden administration rolling out all the vaccine with the possibility that we will only get one, or that the time between the first and second one will be interrupted? So I feel pretty strongly on this. I don't agree with this. I feel we need to follow the recommendations of the CDC. These products have been approved for emergency use based on what was learned in the trials. The trials show the effectiveness is after 2 doses. There's been a couple little things that came out of the trial about perhaps the Moderna dose, we don't have to wait till day 28. Maybe we can get it up to 4 days before day 28. So maybe you can get it at day 24 and still have the same effectiveness. I'm okay with that. There's been some studies that say maybe if we delay it from day 28, if for whatever reason, as long as we get it, that second dose eventually, the results should still be good. I'm okay if we had to delay that dose for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I wouldn't want to put it off for 2 months or 3 months. The risk of this is if one dose gives you 50% effectiveness, what does that mean? That means we're going to have people who've received 1 dose of vaccine and get COVID. And if that happens, your body may be able to fight it off completely, may not be able to fight it off completely. So I think the biggest risk here is creating mutated forms of coronavirus which become resistant. Right now, any mutations seem to the vaccine still seems to be effective against it because they all have these same spike proteins. What we wouldn't want to see is a mutation in the spike protein because our antibodies were ineffectively fighting it off. And I believe that's too much of a risk. So I think we need to go by the guidelines of the CDC approval. So the next question, I'm sorry. What have you heard of the now different suggestion of only 1 shot instead of 2? I just went over that. I think that's too much of a risk. Do the mRNA vaccines have the same potential as the traditional vaccines in triggering an autoimmune disease or response? So I haven't seen any evidence of an autoimmune response to this vaccine. In fact, they have recommended anyone with autoimmune diseases to get the vaccine. They have been included in the trials. It's recommended that they receive the vaccine. a lot of people with autoimmune disorders are taking medications that lower their immune system. So even more importantly, they should get the vaccine. A vaccinated person can still get COVID-19 virus. It will just be a mild case. Can that person pass on the virus to another person, vaccinated or not? If so, how can we get to herd immunity? So if somebody receives a COVID vaccine and gets a mild case of coronavirus, yes, they could still spread it to somebody else. If you just get a mild case, you can spread it to somebody else. So how do we get to herd immunity? How we get to herd immunity is by increasing the number of people who won't get the mild case, won't get the case at all. That's the reason for the herd immunity. If enough people have protection against the virus, the spread is going to be small. It's not going to be widespread. It's going to be contained. So it's not really clear whether or not a vaccinated person can pass the disease, I don't believe. Or somebody with a mild case, if they're not actively coughing. I've heard many cases, and I'm sure you have, of people who've had family members in their household with the virus, yet other family members didn't catch it. Why? Because they're taking the precautions. They're wearing their masks. They're using their hand sanitizers. They're washing their hands. Those things are going to be around for a while. When we reach that herd immunity, I truly believe that coronavirus will only be as feared as the flu is right now, no worse. I feel that once we get those antibodies, and right now the reason the coronavirus is so feared is because when it started, nobody had antibodies. So everybody could have that serious infection. Once we have antibodies, I think we're going to be looking at something more similar to a common cold, less similar to what we've come to know in the last year. If you receive your first dose of vaccine at one center, can you receive your second dose of the same vaccine at a more convenient location? Not really sure how this is going to play out. The scheduling for this is all new. The scheduling software that the state is using is new. As a vaccine site, my plan is to retain doses for my patients to receive their second dose. My plan is to have that as part of the plan. So you, as a patient who struggled so hard to find your first dose, now you're not on the clock to get a second dose. I feel that it's our responsibility to you to get that second dose in you properly. I got my first dose at the Board of Health. When I walked out, I said, now what do I do? They said, 4 weeks from today, you're going to come back at the same exact time for your second dose. I said, perfect. That's exactly how it should be. I had a patient call me today who said she got a dose. Her son found her a dose up in Warren County. She got her first dose, but she was told that they will not be reserving second doses for people, that she's kind of on her own to find a second dose. I don't like that idea. I don't like that plan. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's going to help anybody at this point. Next question. I am signed up on the New Jersey site, but is that a valid list, and how many people are they taking from that list a day? So again, if for anybody who doesn't know, that site, if you can just Google COVID-19 vaccine registry New Jersey, and you'll find the site. You can go to my website, hazletpharmacy.com, follow the links, you'll find the site. What I explained before is there's 4 million New Jerseyans now technically eligible to receive the vaccine. And the state's only receiving about 100,000 doses per week. This will increase. They're releasing people they're using that site, they're releasing ability to get an appointment on that site slowly. As we get more vaccine, it will go much faster. Yes, that site is a valid site. Yes, that site's a valid list. That's the best list to be on. The reason we are not vaccinating right at this moment, the state and the governments that are trying to roll this out in an orderly fashion have put a lot of steps in the process for reporting. The NJVSS, the scheduling software, helps us report that dose quickly, accurately. what they will do when you get you're going to be registered on that site, you're going to get your approval to make an appointment. You're going to be sent either an email or a text message on your phone. It's going to say, click here to schedule your appointment. You're going to click there. You're going to schedule your appointment. Eventually, it's going to issue you one of those QR codes. You're going to walk in here. You're going to show me your QR code. I'm going to scan it. My staff is going to scan it. They're going to go over some questions with you. They're going to send you back to be vaccinated. We're going to scan that QR code again. We're going to scan the vial that your dose is coming out of. And in those 3 scans, all that reporting is done. If it wasn't done that way, for every dose I administer, I would probably need about 2 to 5 minutes to report everything I'd need to report. Our goal is to start, when we start vaccinating, is to vaccinate about 100 patients a day. Do the math. That would take, in 100 doses, I could get 100 doses done in about 4 or 5 hours. The time it would take me for the reporting would take a multiple of that I wouldn't be able to recover to the next day to be able to start vaccinating all over again. It's a way to roll this out quickly as the vaccine becomes available. That's why that site works. That's why that site is the best place to register for it. Is there a plan to distribute and get the vaccine in people's arms? Yes, the plan is here. It's rolling out. It's just rolling out slowly. It's going to take time. There's not a lot of vaccines sitting around right now. The fact that we've rolled out 12 million doses in about 5 weeks, I think is a great number. The good news is, to compare this to flu vaccine, when swine flu, H1N1, came out back in 2013, it took about 3 or 4 months to get that vaccine produced. The reason for that is because, even longer in some cases, in volume, the reason is they had to grow it out the old-fashioned way. They still use eggs to grow out flu vaccine. mRNA vaccine is produced in a lab. They can produce millions and millions of doses very, very rapidly. These companies, the reason we were able to roll this out, normally we wouldn't be able to give a vaccine that many doses 5 weeks after it's been approved, because they would just start manufacturing the vaccine upon approval. They already had this dose produced because they anticipated being approved. They also had all this money around that was given to them by the governments to get this product to market as quickly as possible. So they weren't spending their own money to produce product. If the product never got approved, if they had to throw it out, they didn't lose their money. They didn't have to report back to their stockholders that they wasted all this cash on hand to produce vaccine, because the government had already given the money to do so. The government had already purchased the doses before they were approved. They're going to continue to purchase the doses now that they're approved. So we can, now that they're making the vaccine very rapidly, it's going to very quickly ramp up the number of doses that we're getting. So people are scouring the web and putting their names on every list they can find. Is that what we are to do? We need your help. I still feel that the state list is the best list. You can try to find doses other ways. I do feel that the state list is the best way to do it. Patiently wait. Your dose will come sooner rather than later. How long after testing positive is the recommended quarantine time? So this is a little bit less about the vaccine, more about the disease. That changes very constantly. CDC updates their website very often, almost weekly. The last recommendation I looked at was, if you test positive, you wait till after your symptoms are gone and you start counting 2 weeks from that point. That's your recommended quarantine time. It's a little less clear when it's an exposure. If it's somebody you're exposed to, you want to wait the 10 days to 2 weeks after the exposure, or 5 to 10 days with a negative test. But if it's somebody in your household, you can't stop the exposure. You're exposed every day until they're no longer until they can no longer spread it to you, and then your quarantine starts. So it's even longer for the person who doesn't have it in the household. It's shorter for the person who has it. Can the vaccine be given if you're testing positive? No. If not, how long after testing negative can you receive the vaccine? 3 months. I am over 75. When can I expect to get the vaccine? You could be notified tomorrow. You could be notified next week. You could be notified in 2 weeks. We don't know. You are going to be notified. I honestly didn't think I would be notified for my vaccine till around now. I was very surprised when they notified me on December 29th to come get my first dose. Will I be able to make an appointment at Hazlet Pharmacy or some other place? Yes, you will. Register with the site. It's the best way to get an appointment as soon as it's your turn to get the vaccine. I registered with the state. Will they inform me where and when I can get a shot? They're going to inform you when you can get a shot. They're going to give you choices where you can get a shot. Right now, it's just very difficult to find those appointments. Again, that will change very soon. While the state has expanded vaccine eligibility to those 65 years and older, it does not appear they have aided the county and expanded its inoculation locations or provided any information as to the number of doses available for the coming weeks. Most of us are forced to seek vaccine appointments at a variety of non-government sites with little to no success. Additionally, the Monmouth County appointment site has been a big disappointment. How long will this every man for himself approach continue? I think we went over most of that. And it really comes down to being patient. It is not every man for himself. If you wait for your turn in queue, and there will be vaccine, there will be appointments available for you eventually. Local, municipal, county, and state officials appear uninformed or unaware of available vaccine quantities and location for inoculations. Can Mr. Jackopino share additional clarifying information? I think we went over most of that. I think the local, municipal, county, and state officials are overwhelmed with this. They don't really know what to do. Their hands are tied. They're waiting on vaccine. So the vaccine, which is now in phase one distribution, is only being distributed by the federal government to the states. Starting in February, there are going to be additional federal partners that will be distributing the vaccine. It won't just be the State Board of Health that's getting the vaccine and distributing it. They're doing the best they can at this point. But there will be federal partners. I'm part of Good Neighbor Pharmacy. We buy from a wholesaler called AmerisourceBergen. They're the largest wholesaler in the nation. They are our federal partner for the federal level of vaccine distribution. There are many other federal partners. These federal partners will be distributing vaccine to us. So right now, I'm trying to vaccine from the state as we meet their criteria. The same criteria is for the federal partners. Once that happens, and this is going to be mostly in the phase 2 distribution, which is anticipated to be in the mid to late part of February, I will be receiving vaccine not only from the state, but also from my federal partners as well. Vaccine's going to be the same. The cost is still going to be, it's still not going to cost you to get the vaccine. It's just a method of distribution because there will be more available. The federal government has more avenues to get it to me so I can get it to you. That's why I mean this will exponentially increase as the vaccine becomes more available. It's just not available right now. There's just very little of it available. Can Mr. Jackopino clarify the differences in Pfizer versus Moderna vaccines? The only difference really is the storage of it. The Moderna vaccine stays at a traditional standard freezer temperature. The Pfizer vaccine's at an ultra low temperature. Pfizer has to be -70. Moderna has to be between -25 degrees Celsius and 5 degrees Celsius, which most standard freezers can keep that temperature. They do have some mild differences in the additional excipients that are in there. Some of the reason they weren't able to come out with an mRNA vaccine in the past is they had a hard time delivering those set of instructions into the cell. The body would break it down before it got into the cell. That's the reason they use the polyethylene glycol. That's the reason They can't take that out, even though people are having allergic reactions to it. That aids the delivery of the vaccine to the cell, so the body can make that immune response to the, can build the spike proteins and then make the immune response to it. But they both work the same way. There's some mild differences in the excipients, and the main difference is 21 days between 2 Pfizer doses, 28 days between 2 Moderna doses. A good point to note here is if you get Moderna as your first dose, you have to get Moderna as your second dose. If you get Pfizer as your first dose, you have to get Pfizer as your second dose. That's another reason why it's not good to bounce between locations, because if you get your first dose at one location that maybe had Pfizer, and then you go to your second dose, they may not have the capabilities to have the Pfizer vaccine. That's the dose you need. So same place makes the most sense. If if there's some reason you can't get a dose at the first place, you can receive a dose at a second place. It's just going to be harder to find that second dose now that we're choosing a specific dose rather than whatever dose they have. Please offer guidance on the best how and where to register for the vaccine. If anybody still has questions about that, it's the state's website. That is the best place to register for the vaccine. I have people sending me links. Try this place, try this place. I'm putting my name on so many lists. Is that what we have to do? No, please don't do that. Please don't put your name on all these different lists. Put your name on one list. Put yourself on the state registry. That's it. Monmouth County also has a list. They tell me, I spoke to someone at the county today, they told me that their list is working hand in hand with the state list. Overlapping names is only going to lead to confusion. It's only going to slow people getting their appointments. I would just go with the one list. If you go onto the VNA website, and if you go onto Bayshore's website and you find that you're able to get an appointment for a dose, that's fine. If you want to look that way, that's fine. I wouldn't just call every place that you know might be vaccinating and ask to be put on a waiting list. I've had I probably get 100 to 200 calls a day or more about the COVID vaccine. Most people ask me to put them on a wait list. If I would have been accumulating a list, I probably have about 2,000 to 3,000 names on that list right now. It would take me more time to contact everybody on that list than it would be to administer 2,000 to 3,000 doses of the vaccine. So the state's website is the best place to go on. They will notify you when it's your turn. If the phases change and suddenly you become higher in phase because of something that's found out, it will automatically do that. It will set a priority for everybody on there. An 87-year-old friend does not have email or computer access. How can he get an appointment for the vaccine? He lives alone in Lincroft. We get this call a lot. I get this call a lot. I usually try to take all of these calls. I've yet to find somebody who doesn't have a friend, a neighbor, a family member, a relative, somebody who has access to a computer. I cannot register everybody. If I registered everybody, they would contact me when everybody's due to make an appointment. I can't do that. This is the time for us to all pull together. We have to be each other's neighbors. We have to look out for our neighbors. We have to help everybody through it. If we have an 87-year-old friend who doesn't have the capabilities to do this, be that person's friend. Go on the computer, help them make an appointment. I did it for my mom, took 3 minutes. It really doesn't take long to go onto the state's website and register somebody. I spoke to a disabled boy the other day who was struggling getting his elderly parents appointments on the registry. I walked him through it. It's not hard. We can get through this together. It's time for us to work together. So that's the end of the questions I had before the webinar. Karen, do you have any others that seem a little different you want me to look at?
Yes, if you just look there at the Q&A, there's a couple of them. I gotta say though that I think that line about working together is such a beautiful concluding line. But there were a couple. There's one, I think you kind of mentioned it, but if you're allergic to antibiotics or any meds, can you safely take the vaccine?
You can safely get the vaccine if you're allergic to anything anaphylactically, meaning your throat closed up, you had to use an EpiPen. You're going to be watched for 30 minutes after you receive this vaccine. So when you get your vaccine, we're going to watch you for 30 minutes. Most of those reactions would show up that quickly. Another thing, I just thought of some questions that are asked to me on a daily basis. Should I take an antihistamine before the vaccine? And the actual answer is no, you should not. Because if you were going to have an allergic reaction, we'd want to see it. We'd want to see it before you leave. If you took an antihistamine, you could potentially delay the allergic reaction until after you leave here, and it would be harder for us to direct you to the proper care. Everybody has to wait 15 minutes after receiving this vaccine. We will observe you for 15 minutes. If you've ever had an allergic reaction, we're going to observe you for 30 minutes. If you have allergies to anything else other than after receiving a vaccine, you can get the vaccine, unless the reaction was to polyethylene glycol or polysorbate.
Okay. This is about the mutated. Does the current vaccine help?
I see that.
Yeah.
Yes. Right now, they're saying that it does. There's no evidence that the vaccine will not work against the mutated form. The mutated form has changed slightly where it spreads a little bit easier, but the vaccine, the virus still has the same spike proteins. So again, we're building antibodies to the spike proteins. So anything that looks like a spike protein on that coronavirus, the vaccine is going to work against, because the antibodies are going to work against it.
Okay, and you answered about the tested positive and about your pharmacy. Although Jerry will be able to get the vaccine at your pharmacy. So if we go and register on the state website, and then our number comes up, they send us something, will then your pharmacy be one of our options that we choose from?
Yes, yes. So my one friend is a physical therapist. She was notified last week that she was able to schedule an appointment for a vaccine. She sent me the link. She sent me the text that, we did show up on the site, but all 5 of the places that showed up said no appointments available at this time. That's going to be that way for a little while, because sites like me, which are registered with the state and ready to administer vaccine, we don't have vaccine yet. So there's no appointments available because there's no vaccine to create an appointment. The other thing that's to note, people are looking at this and they can't find an appointment tomorrow, the next day, next week, the following week, next month. We're not going to post appointments until we have vaccine for those appointments. Because the last thing I want to do is give you an appointment and then have you show up and tell you that I don't have a vaccine for you. So when I have vaccine in my hands, I will be posting the number of appointments that I can currently take. As that changes, as I get more vaccine, more appointments will open. So most places are only showing appointments for the next 2 to 3 days, maybe the next week, because they want to play that week out first, reassess, and then set appointments for the following week. So when you do get your chance to set an appointment, we have to look back, every day, every couple days, to see if there's appointments available, and they will open up.
Okay. So someone was curious about your second shot, and you said you did get it. They wanted to know if your
reaction... No, I didn't get my second shot yet.
Oh,
I'm scheduled next Tuesday to get my second shot, and I have to say, so I received my first shot at the Monmouth County Board of Health down in Freehold. They've moved a lot of their vaccinating out of that building, and they moved it to a different facility. But they called me on Saturday, and I got the phone call, and I was nervous. I was waiting for them to tell me they didn't have a shot for me for my second dose, but they informed me that my appointment was still going to be the same time for my second dose. They just moved the location, which was wonderful. They seemed on top of it, which I was impressed by that. I was impressed that they reached out to me for a vaccine. I was impressed that they held a dose for me for the second dose. One of the biggest scheduling issues I see right now is with a vaccine that has 2 doses, when I give doses for the next 28 days, the following 28 days after that is going to be second doses for this 28 days worth of vaccine. So we do have that in the plans. We have plans to start out at one level of vaccinating and ramp that up as the vaccine becomes more plentiful. I have 5 vaccinators here, a pharmacy that I'm very friendly with, Bayshore Pharmacy down in Atlantic Highlands. He also owns Middletown Pharmacy in Middletown. He has a number of vaccinators. We're considering doing a mega site somewhere locally as the vaccine becomes available. We will let people know about that because we're going to have to ramp up our efforts as we need to get second doses in. We don't want to halt any first doses. We want everybody to still have the same ability to continue to get their first dose. But no, I haven't received my second dose yet. I can give you an update maybe next week on how I react with that, but I'm looking forward to getting it done.
All right, good. That was a good listener. People are doing a nice job of listening. Okay, so must you return to the same site for the first and second? You said it's best to,
but you don't have to.
Yeah, and the efficacy of the J&J vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Still waiting to see that data. They're supposed to be submitting it later on this month. I'm anticipating 90% plus, but it's just speculation. I don't know for sure. I think we're all going to hear that at the same time. That'll be broadcast very loud and clear on the news, I believe, as soon as they have that number down to how they're submitting their data. But they are still in a process of reviewing their data to submit to the FDA.
In the meantime, are there ways I can strengthen my immune system?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I have personally been taking, since this whole thing began, vitamin C every day. Vitamin C can be a little irritating to the stomach to some people. I take the ester C, which adds a buffer to it, so it's not so acidic on your system. I've been taking that since March. I've been taking zinc on a regular basis. I've been taking vitamin D. I've been trying to eat well, keep yourself well hydrated. Okay, very important to keep yourself well hydrated. I always keep a bottle of water near you. Sometimes I find at work, I don't because I'm wearing a mask all day, but I do try to take a break every now and then and just drink some water because keeping yourself well hydrated is a very good way to help prevent this. And please wear your masks, wear them correctly. We all know how to wear the masks now. If we don't know how to wear a mask, look it up online, ask someone to show you. It's not that hard. I see too many people still coming into the pharmacy with the mask hanging down below their nose or around their chin, or they wear the mask all the way up to the counter and then they pull it off to talk to me. I can hear you just fine with the mask on. I've been doing it for almost a year now. Wear the mask properly. They work. They truly work. How many people have you heard of that have the flu or have had the flu since this pandemic started? Why? We're doing the right things. I'm kind of hoping that after this is all over, I administered a record number of flu vaccines this year. I can't tell you how many people came in for their first flu shot that never got it before. So we're vaccinating more people against the flu because people are afraid. They're afraid of getting sick and not knowing what it is. But people are wearing their masks. They're using hand sanitizer. They're washing their hands. These are things we should be doing all along. And I'm kind of hoping after this is all over, we're all going to have our masks in our houses and we're going to hear that the flu's starting to go around, and maybe you throw on a mask to go out to the grocery store or throw on a mask if you're going to be in close quarters or shopping at the mall, just to maybe prevent other things down the road. It may not be a bad idea.
That makes sense. Is there a personal health problem if we get first dose and at the same time still have, should we get tested before we take the shot? I think you answered that, right?
I answered that. Unless you have symptoms, there's no reason to get tested before you take the first shot. If There's no reason to test yourself for the antibodies. If you're questioned whether or not maybe you had a bad illness and didn't have the ability to get tested at the time, and maybe you have the antibodies, call me up. We do antibody testing. We can set an appointment for that. But I don't think there's any reason to just have yourself swabbed and tested for coronavirus before the vaccine, unless you know you had an exposure or you have some symptoms and you're questioning whether or not you currently have coronavirus.
Okay. You don't happen to know if the state website is sending out emails based on 1A and 1B?
So I put another link on my website too, who is currently, if you follow the same link to where the registration is on the website, I put another link explaining who is currently eligible for the vaccine. Just like when they start, all of a sudden they said that law enforcement, first responders were eligible. They never, even though they were in 1B, they never said we're starting 1B. Even though now they're opening it up to people who were in 1B and who were in 1C, they never really said we're in 1B or 1C. But the majority of 1B is now technically eligible, and parts of 1C are also eligible. And even people who, teachers who were in 1B are eligible now. They're trying to get as many people who are most at risk for number one, catching COVID or having the more serious cases of COVID. They're trying to get them vaccinated as soon as possible. And as soon as possible is, it's going to get easier. I promise you in the coming weeks.
There are a couple of questions here about the second dosage. So they want to know, is the second exactly the same as the first? And then they want to know, if you've got it someplace, do you have to make sure you get an appointment, or do they have some responsibility? If they gave you the first one, do they have responsibility for giving you the second one?
Yes, so the second dose is the exact same dosage. So there's no difference from dose 1 to dose 2 with the two vaccines that are now currently out. AstraZeneca, if you read some of the news about AstraZeneca, their vaccine seemed to do better if the first dose was a half dose and the second dose was a full dose. It created more immunity. And the theory behind that is the half dose prepared your body better for the larger dose. And then it was able to create a larger level of antibodies. But when we gave 2 full doses, we had lower levels of antibodies. It's not really known. The AstraZeneca, when that comes out, I believe it's going to be a lower dose the first time and a higher dose the second time. But the two vaccines are currently on the market are the same dose for the first and second doses. Again, Johnson & Johnson's only going to be 1 dose, and AstraZeneca is going to go from a low dose to a high dose. Any of the other vaccines that are still in production, I don't know.
And do you think, going back to this, does a person, so I'll read it. If I get the first dose of the vaccine, do I need to go online and take my chances trying to schedule a second dose, or does the facility that vaccinates me allocate a second dose for me?
I would ask at the facility that you get vaccinated at what their plan is for you for a second dose. I have to say, to me, it feels like the Board of Health had a good plan. I got my first dose. I have a reserve dose for my second dose. All of my staff that got their first dose have all been told that they have an appointment already for their second dose. And some of my staff received their vaccine at the Board of Health. Some of my staff received their vaccine at the VNA. So both those places have a plan. I plan on having a plan. I would question wherever you go, I would ask them, what's the plan for my second dose? Am I on my own? Like the customer I spoke to earlier today, I didn't like that. That to me, it was unacceptable to get to give a first dose and have no plan for the patient to get their second dose. I think it's unacceptable. It's hard enough finding a first dose. And yeah, it might be easier to find a dose 28 days from now, but just to go on faith that this patient's not going to have a problem finding their second dose, on their own. This was a woman in her 80s as well. So it's not that, she may have needed assistance to find this second dose. I don't think that's fair to the patient. So I think wherever you get your appointment, that should be a question when you go to get your first dose. What about my second dose?
Key question to keep in mind.
Yes.
All right, so this will be the last question. There's a couple of thank yous, very informative. But then, can I check on Hazlet Pharmacy website often to see if I could make an appointment, as I love that pharmacy?
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I am updating my website often. What I've done so far in the past, let's say, week and a half, I've posted information on the website. I've put links on the website to register at the state registry. I have sent the best way. If you're one of my patients, make sure I have your cell number on file. If you're unsure, give a call, stop in, give your updated phone number. A lot of people I have home numbers on. I sent out in the last week, I went through everybody in my files who was over 65 current patients, and I sent out a text to them. I sent out a text that gave the link to the state's registry. If you received my text, all you had to do was open your text, click on the link. It took you right to the state's website, and you could have registered. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. Unfortunately, of my patients who were 65 and older, I believe there was about 2,000 of them who I had on file. I had less than a third of them. I had their cell numbers as their main number. You might be one.
You don't have mine. You call the house phone.
And so I had the house number. So right now, my system is now making calls out to those over 65 who I have house numbers. If you haven't received that call, you're probably going to. But the system, when it does a call out, it's going to make only a certain number of calls per day, because a lot of people have questions about the calls, and then those calls come through to us. So it does about 100 a day, and it's going to take, I think, 2 to 3 weeks to get at least all those calls out, whereas it took me 2 hours to get all the texts out. So if I don't have your current phone number, your cell number, call us up, tell us to put that number on file, get the house numbers out of there. We're walking around with our cell phones. It makes it so much easier for me to contact you. But the original question, yes, I will be updating that on my website, but I can very rapidly get information out to you via text. I think it's great if you update those numbers with us.
Okay, well, there's one more. If you have anxiety before getting the vaccine, can you take a Xanax?
Go right ahead. I don't see any problem with that. I have to say, I truly felt anxious myself going for my first dose, and this is what I do. And I trust the science. I really do. I've been a conservative person my whole life. I never wanted to take that medication when it first came out. I always wanted to wait. I've looked at this research. I look at the data. I trust it. And I briefly hesitated when they called me that night before that I was going to get my vaccine, but I went. I said, I'm going for this. This is the way out of this pandemic. The only way out of this pandemic that I can see is through this vaccine. Either that or we wait years for it to burn itself out. And we don't all want to live like this for years. It's a lot of good years, a lot of good time going by.
Thank you. I want to thank you very much. I want you to take a minute now and look down the rest of those Q&As there, because there are a lot of people saying thank you to you and giving different comments. And I want to thank everyone for coming to our meeting here. Thank you, Jerry, very much. I want to remind people that next month we're going to be doing a meeting on plastics and the new law on plastic bags. And then possibly in March, we're trying to do an event on beekeeping. So there's lots of variety in the kinds of things that we're looking at. If you like this meeting and like what you saw here, if you would want to join our group, Homedel-Silu, we have a website, www.homedel-silu.org, and we'd love to have you join us. And this meeting, so you can watch it again, has all been streamed live on YouTube, so it will be there. A few people raised their hands. I'm not taking hand raising, but if you want to just put a note, look at all these thank yous, Jerry. This is very nice.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent performance. Thank you for taking, here, this is beautiful. Thank you, Jerry. Excellent, informative presentation. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us this evening and for everything you do for our community. Thank you, Deneen Jackson. That was a lovely conclusion. So now, and I assume, Jerry, on the Hazlet Pharmacy Facebook, people can make questions if for some reason they have something that we didn't get a chance to go over.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming, and good evening, and please consider joining CELU, homedale-celu.org, right? I always go backwards. homedale-celu.org. Yes, please, thank you. Hope you join us. Thank you, Jerry. Go